My next guest is the author of what some are saying will be the most controversial, perhaps even hated book of the year. Unintended Consequences goes against the grain in arguing that the rise of the 1% is actually good for the 99%. The author says that contrary to what the Occupy movement might say, inequality does have its benefits. Ed Conard is here to explain. He is a former managing director at Bain Capital. Yes, he worked closely with Mitt Romney and is now one of his top donors. He joins me now. So Ed, let's start by just explain to me, why is the rise of the 1% good for the economy?
Sure. It's not really the central focus of the book. The book is about how to get the economy to grow faster. That growth in the long run is powered by innovation and risk-taking. And part of what the book argues is that the payoffs for risk-taking are essential to getting more risk-taking in this economy, and that's good for the middle class and the working poor.
So you want people to invest, take risks with their capital so that you spur innovation?
Yes, although I think the economy has changed significantly from where it was in the 1950s, when capital investment to build an automotive industry and a highway system were essential to growth, to one today where 13 guys on a computer can create Instagram and $1 billion of value in 2 years. It's now much more powered by risk-taking than it is by the funding of investment.
But let me ask you about the kind of alternate view, let's say, that somebody like Robert Reich would present, which is that the problem with our economy has become that because of this inequality, what you have is enormous gains going to the top 1%, and that they can't consume all that much. You can't, at the end of the day, you can't consume, $5 million a year, $20 million a year that people are making, and that the result is that the economy lacks the kind of juice it would have if you had more middle-class consumption. That actually precisely what you're celebrating, which is that the rich have all this money to spare, is the problem, that you have a deficit of consumption.
Sure. Because
you don't have middle-class incomes and the wages rising, and these guys, therefore, can't power the economy, and they are the 99%.
Sure. It's a classic argument, been made by many people, to be sure. I believe that the current recession stems from a mistaken diagnosis of the financial crisis, and that has led to a reduction in risk-taking and consumer demand, and that until we change that diagnosis and reorient the financial sector, we will have a slow recovery.
Leaving aside the economics, do you see how the politics or this tone of the book is going to rub people the wrong way? Because it sounds like sometimes you're saying, look, just let the 1% get richer and richer. They're making investments that are good for everybody, and it's you middle-class folk who are actually not pulling your weight in the economy.
Well, the tone of the New York Times article is going to get everybody antagonized, which I suppose is great because it will sell more books. It hardly says that the middle class is not pulling their weight. If anything, it says that the most talented people are not pulling their weights because they need to take more risk and find more innovation to accelerate the growth in the economy.
And how do you do that?
I think one of the things you do is you don't reduce the payoffs for risk-taking. How do you get people to take the risk that 99% of the time what they're trying to do is going to get pruned away and they'll be set back as a result? And that's what we want to happen in our economy because the opportunity for innovation has changed dramatically. We're not exploiting the value of capitalizing on the value of cars today. We are 13 guys in a computer can create a value. So when it comes to what happens to the distribution of income in the economy, we need a million Steve Jobs. Getting one more of them, or two more of them, or three more of them, in the short run causes some income inequality. Before we get enough of them where it changes course and goes in the other direction, I would say, what's the priority? Getting the economy to grow faster, getting more innovation to pump up employment and wages, or dampening down income inequality? I'd take the first over the second. That would be my priority, and I think it's beneficial to the middle class and the working poor.
You've worked with Mitt Romney for years. Do you think he agrees with what's in this book?
I think at the highest level he agrees with the book. He certainly celebrates entrepreneurialism, risk-taking to produce innovation. The book covers a lot of ground. There's lots of counterintuitive, provocative, even controversial things in the book. There's nobody who agrees with everything that's in the book, except perhaps me.
What do you think of Mitt Romney as an executive?
I thought he was an outstanding executive. He's everything that you would expect him to be, and it's hard to watch the cartoon portrayed in the TV. He's brilliant. He has a deep understanding of how business works. He's great at consensus building. He's decisive when he needs to be decisive. He surrounded himself with the most capable people. He encouraged those people to challenge him and to challenge each other, so that there was enormous preparation when you went into the room to talk to him, and he had the highest level of integrity. He was only trying to do what was best in the long term.
But when you watch this guy on the campaign trail, particularly in the primaries, would it make you wince?
I think he does a great job, but let's be clear. He didn't spend his life making political speeches to the people. He spent a lot of time around a table like this with 5 or 10 decision makers trying to get to the truth of a matter and make a very complex and difficult decision. So he's not as practiced in that area as he could be if he'd have been his whole life.
So if he is as brilliant and has so much integrity, explain to me how he could, at that Republican debate, when told if you could close the deficit and you would get $10 of spending cuts for $1 of tax increases, would you take it? And he said no. I mean, you know the math. Surely the Mitt Romney you're describing understands that you can't close this deficit without more revenues.
I'd say 2 things. The first is, I don't speak for Mitt Romney. I speak for myself. I put forward my argument. So the person who has to answer that question is obviously Mitt Romney. Are there tough trade-offs to be made? Of course there's tough trade-offs to be made. Does he understand that? I'm sure he understands it. My view would be we'd be lucky to get him to be making those tough trade-offs, because he would make them with more integrity and more drive for the truth than almost anybody I've ever worked with.
Ed, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Up next, what in